I'll start a series of videos about species-typical behaviors. This is an opportunity to see what scientific research has to say about cats. To start, let's look at what species-typical behaviors are and why they are important. When I talk about species-typical behaviors, I'm talking about behaviors that a cat will typically exhibit as a member of its own species. We can think about perching or scratching surfaces, but we also want to think about how those behaviors are expressed. For example, a bird perches high up by flying, which is very different from the way a cat perches high up, which is by jumping or climbing. Cats perch in a cat-typical way, they eat in a cat-typical way, they communicate in a cat-typical way, they hunt in a cat-typical way. You're getting the hang of it. So I'm not talking about behaviors that are unique to cats or specific to cats. Other animals perch, communicate, and hunt. I'm talking about behaviors that generally correspond to those that the cat species exhibits and how they exhibit them. Science tells us a little bit about these behaviors. I'll try to include studies where it's relevant. We can think here of modal action patterns or maps. Maps are behavioral sequences potentially written in the cat's genetics, therefore innate, but which are subject to being modified by learning. I will not focus on defining whether or not a sequence is a map. I aim to think globally about what a cat is and what behaviors might be important for them to be able to express to ensure their well-being. But I might come back to maps now and then. It's good here to remember that domestication does not eliminate behaviors typical of a species. A cat is not a blank slate because it is labeled a domestic species. Cats are not robots either. They come with a genetic background that prompts them to perform certain actions regularly in order to feel good. Their bodies are made to function this way, to get satisfaction from expressing certain behaviors, and this satisfaction is important for their well-being. Just as a cat that feels the need to eat must be able to eat in order to feel good about their life, a cat that feels the need to perch must be able to have the opportunity to perch in order to feel good, etc. So, why is it important to explore species-typical behaviors? Because that's what makes a cat a cat. Because it's important for the cat to feel good and have a sense of control over their life. We're talking here about agency. Because they are programmed to function this way, so being able to do these behaviors is satisfying for them. Because it makes sharing our life with a cat more interesting. To solve and prevent behavior problems. For example, if your cat meows and wakes you up early, eating several meals a day could be important to solve the problem. We'll come back to this in a future video. So this will be a series of videos on the typical behaviors of the cat species that will include behaviors that immediately come to mind, those that we take for granted, those that we do not think about, and finally, what to consider if a cat does not exhibit these behaviors. I hope that you'll be as enthusiastic as I am to explore the cat in terms of the typical behaviors of their species.